Welcome to Eric on the Last Taboo. This is your host, Eric Diaz. And today we are joined by a good friend of mine, Kevin Boyer. Kevin, good to have you.
Thank you.
Kevin is going to talk about being in recovery from alcoholism and what it's like to develop Alzheimer's in recovery. So first we're going to start with the first question. Who is Kevin Boyer?
Kevin Boyer was born in Atlanta. He's a native Atlanta. Grew up in the Doraville area and then Sandy Springs. Went to college, majored in criminal justice. Thought I wanted to go in law enforcement. And when I got out of school, first job was kind of law enforcement. I worked at Perimeter Mall in security. And at that point, somewhere along the way, I decided... because I saw, you can imagine working in security, I saw a lot of people that had a lot of problems because we had to deal with all kinds of folks. And had to get police involved a lot of times, DeKalb County Police. And I always wondered what happened to those people that, had whatever issues they might be having, whether it be shoplifting or mental health issues. Actually, there were some folks there that we had to deal with that. And I always wondered kind of what now. Some people went to jail and some people went to hospitals. So I had already started working on a master's. I thought I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I was working on a master's in public administration, which is a nice coverall. So along the way, when I started thinking more about the counseling or about how to help people, I had taken a class with introductory counseling as just an elective, and met some people that were in that business, and that's how I got interested in or decided to pursue a job in counseling.
All right. And your memory is very sharp from 30, 40 years ago.
That's typical of Alzheimer's. Long-term memory is usually very good. And actually, to be honest with you, when it comes to Alzheimer's, memory gets talked about way too much. That's not the most impairing problem, or the most of the impairment. What really causes problems is with the ability to do, like, you got a computer sitting in front of you, that type of work that requires the cognitive skills that you would need to do stuff on a computer, that type of thing. When you start trying to use your other cognitive skills, that's where most people get into.
Are there other misconceptions about Alzheimer's, things that don't get talked about enough, things that get talked about too much?
I think there's a kind of a denial about Alzheimer's. Actually, people don't want to think about it. It worries them that they might start having problems as they get older. Everybody suffers. Everybody across the board. Everybody suffers from some impairment in the memory as people start to get older. But Alzheimer's is such a specific thing that just goes after, once again, those parts of the brain that really have to do with your overall functioning. So I think there's a lot of just misconception or whatever about Alzheimer's. And people don't realize that it is there's a diagnosis. Now, some people do suffer memory problems from something else. They may have a brain tumor.
A lot of people view it as a natural sign of aging, and
which is not true.
Okay.
False. Yeah.
Okay.
There are people who live to be 100 years old, and they never have any problem with memory.
All right. And you were growing up in Atlanta during some very important historical events. What do you remember from, say, the civil rights movement from that time, like growing up in public schools in Atlanta, Sandy Springs, Doraville?
I remember not having, or I should say having very few, very few black children in both elementary school or whatever, even kindergarten, elementary school, and high school. in the area. Once again, I grew up in, first was Doraville, but then we moved to, most of my growing up was been in Sandy Springs, which, if people know, Sandy Springs is right across, I mean, just right across the Atlantic City limits. That's North Fulton County, from the Atlantic City limits there up to the Chattahoochee River. That's kind of the Sandy Springs area. It was not a city until actually fairly recently. And that's where a lot of, so I witnessed that kind of white flight, as people talk about it. And specifically, actually, even my parents, I mean, I heard them talking about it. They didn't want us to go to school in the city of Atlanta. They wanted us to go be in Fulton County.
Okay. And what do you do for fun?
I love to, my wife and I love to travel. And we're always planning some trip. We've got one now. We're trying to get set to go to Israel in the fall. So I love to travel. Always have. I like going out and going for walks in like over at Kennesaw Mountain. I enjoy that. I have gotten into some more other exercise, trying to keep in pretty good shape. Love reading. I always have a book going, some kind of novel going. Either I like science fiction or political, not real life politics. That's horrible. I don't want to hear anything about that. Fictional kind of political stuff. And I always have. Sometimes I have two books going at the same time. And I also like to read a lot of stuff about spirituality. So I enjoy reading. I like watching TV. My wife and I usually have some kind of series going. So.
All right, so you mentioned that you were originally going to study criminal justice.
Right.
And where did you first go to college?
Georgia Southern, which at the time was just a 4-year college. It's now a university, part of one of the universities in UGA, in the university system. So that's where I started out. I graduated from high school in 1975, so I started at Georgia Southern in that fall, I guess. Actually, I think I went summer quarter. I kind of got early start, really, because I was ready to start working on something.
And when you were in college, how long was it before you decided you didn't want to be a cop?
Well, actually, that wasn't in college that I decided I didn't want to be a cop. I still thought I wanted to go into. I wasn't real sure. Actually, did part of my college degree was it was criminal justice, and I did an internship with the GBI, which was actually fascinating. Really, that was pretty amazing. And I thought they hired a lot of people that worked as interns with them into the GBI. And I thought about going into it. One of the agents that I was working with tried to talk me out of it, actually. He did talk me out of it. He said, you know what they're going to do? They're going to put you they're going to use you as an undercover agent for narcotics. And because you're young, what they'll do is they'll make you a narcotics agent, and then they'll stick you in a college town to try to. So, yeah, he talked me out of that. So that's why I kind of started pursuing higher education, hoping to get into something. And from there, I started getting more and more interested in counseling.
Okay. And how much did you drink in college?
Oh, it was large amounts, but it was binge drinking. I didn't drink necessarily. Well, I didn't. I mean, I can say I didn't. It depended on who I was hanging out with. I had a kind of variety of friends. I was very blessed to have several different friends, and some of them were drinkers, and some of them weren't. So if I was kind of with the non-drinkers, my drinking would obviously be less. I almost went into getting into fraternity stuff, and there's an enormous amount of drinking in that. So that escalated big time. So it really kind of depended on, because like I said, there were some friends of mine that didn't drink at all, and I still drank around them, but I didn't drink as much. So, but it was, I mean, it's probably. I won't necessarily say it was daily my entire college career, there would be periods where
Did you ever miss a deadline or say have it affect your grades because of your drinking?
I didn't do well anyway, so I'm not sure. I always struggled in school. And so, if I was trying to study, if I was drinking, it would make it kind of difficult. But then again, now that I think back on it, because I was on probation, actually, academic probation in college at one point because my grades had dropped so low. And I really got serious about it after that. So I think probably, I was studying more, staying up late and studying and not drinking. Although, even that, now that I think about it, I'd find a place where I could get away from everybody. I was actually working for part of the school service or the student services. So I had offices I could go to and do studying at night. But later that night, invariably, I'd go out, have pizza with people, and although even then there were some people that once again weren't really drinkers. The friends that weren't really drinkers. So if we went out to the local pizza place, I might not even have a beer, but then with the other folks, I would gravitate towards. And once again, that was in college. When I got out of college, got an apartment with some friends of mine, and the drinking really escalated after that.
Oh, okay. And when did you get your first counseling job?
That was right out of, well, not right out of college. Actually, when I got out of college, like I said, I worked in security, thinking I wanted to go in law enforcement. So the first counseling job was about 2 or 3, like 1980, probably, a couple of years after I graduated from college. And it was in now I was still just had an undergraduate degree. I had a degree in Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. But I got a job, and I knew I needed to get a master's to be able to go into any kind of work, do any kind of counseling. I did find that out early. So, but while I was in school, and I did start working at a hospital. That was my first job, working inpatient as a direct care staff in one of the inpatient. It was part of a general hospital, long gone now. It's called West Paces Ferry Hospital over in Atlanta, off of 75. They're gone now, but that was my first job.
All right. And did you get married during this time?
No, I didn't meet my wife until, let's see, when did we? She actually came to work as a bartender at the bar that I used to hang out at.
Oh, okay.
Near where I lived, up near Roswell. It was part of a chain called Crowley's, and this one was called River House. And she came to work there as a bartender and made it clear she didn't date, so I had to be sneaky about it. And so we got to know each other because I knew everybody at the bar. So she found out, that I was okay. She had no idea the amount of drinking that I was doing, but she was actually drinking at that time too. Nowhere near what I was, but. So we started dating, even though she said she didn't date. We started dating in, I guess, 1986. And then we started living together and then got married in 1988.
Did you guys ever have any kids?
No, we decided, it was a kind of a, we were older, not that old, but older kind of since we had gotten a little bit later getting married. That was one factor in it, was the age and thinking about having kids kind of at a later age, at that age. But there may have been, she never really said this, but she was concerned about my drinking, even though, once again, she drank for a while too. She came from, she had a father who was an alcoholic. So she was very much aware of the problems that alcohol create. So she was, and she stopped drinking on her own just because she had some health. She had some gastrointestinal problems, so she stopped drinking because of that. I continued, and it actually, I don't know, it almost seemed like after she stopped drinking, I didn't have her to drink with. My drinking escalated in a lot of different ways because I'd go out and I'd lie. I'd say, well, I have to work late, and I wasn't working. I was stopping off at a bar or something. And a lot of times I wasn't going out with other people. I was just stopping at whatever.
Were you drinking at a bar to be secretive, to hide it from your wife?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then when I got home, I might have she was okay with, me having obligatory 1 or 2 beers. But then, now I do that, but then when she went to bed, went to sleep, then then I'd really start drinking after that. So.
All right. And what made you decide that you had a drinking problem?
No, I didn't decide I had a drinking problem. I didn't think I had a problem. I didn't have a problem with the drinking. It was the easiest thing I did.
What made the people around you? What made you come into recovery?
It was a direct intervention from God. I'm not quite the. It talks about in the big book what Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, talked about his white light experience, and I don't know if it was quite I don't remember a white light, but I do remember a voice. I have very clear. I was once again getting ready to start my nighttime drinking because she had gone to bed, and I was sitting in the. She had at this point she was fed up with it. She had already told me she was, she didn't say she was, or she was thinking of divorce. She was thinking. So my solution to that was drinking more. So I was in, and she kind of exiled me to another room in the house. So I was in my little TV room, and I had my Guinness. I used to drink Guinness, and I had it all poured into the glass, and had a big old glass, and I was ready to start my nighttime drinking. And just as clear as we're talking now, I hear a voice in the room coming out of the air, saying, rather deep voice as I recall, and this voice said, you need to stop drinking and you need to go to AA. And people said, well, how'd you know what that was? If you experience something like that, well, for one thing, there wasn't anybody else around. And I was pretty sure it wasn't hallucinating because I'm a counselor. I know about hallucinations. So I proceeded to argue with God and say, well, I'll stop drinking. I won't drink anymore tonight, but I don't want to go to a meeting. It's like, 10 o'clock at night. I'll go tomorrow morning. And God said in his godlike way, maybe you didn't hear me the first time, and you need to go now. And I'm like, now. And he said, now. As it turned out, I knew exactly where there was an AA meeting because, once again, I'm a counselor and I know all about AA. So I drove up to 8111, which is a clubhouse, AA clubhouse up on Roswell Road over in Sandy Springs. I got there. I was late. There's an old saying in AA: the only AA meeting you're late to is your first meeting. And I was late because I thought the meeting started at 11, the last meeting of the night. They call it a candlelight meeting. They can't burn candles there because the fire marshal said you could burn down the building, so don't do that anymore. But
that's a very valid concern.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it used to be It was an old. If anybody knows, 8111. They got a new building now, but it used to be an old house, and obviously all wood. So they were right. So they had these little candles. So anyway, I get up there, and it had started. So it was at 10:30, and then I don't fault 8111, but I still remember this, and this made an impact on me. Is that I picked up a white chip. If people know about AA, that's the first chip you take. Because at that point you're admitting you have a problem. Nobody approached me after the meeting. Until this day, when I go to AA meetings, no one should walk out of an AA meeting if they picked up a white chip and not have somebody approach them. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not faulting, I'm not going, criticizing 8111. It's a great place. But that particular night, somebody should have come up.
But you know what? You were there to get sober, and you didn't let that deter you.
No, I did.
So, yes.
Well, and what I approached people, because I went up to some folks.
Yeah, so you...
And they told me about they asked where I lived, and I told them, and they told me about some meetings that were going to be that next morning, which is a good idea to get into it. So I went to my second meeting at Tillman Methodist Church in Smyrna the next morning.
All right. And how did you departmentalize being an active addiction and counseling addicts?
Actually, I found it helpful because I had an understanding of it. And I was very honest with clients early on that I was a recovering alcoholic.
No, but when you were in active addiction.
Oh, when I was drinking.
Yeah.
How did I whatever
departmentalize?
I didn't think I had a problem, which is common with
did all the research
all alcoholics don't think they have a problem.
Yes. Did all the research you did about addiction help you when you did come into recovery?
Yes. Well, just working in working in the business, working as a counselor, and having worked with people in recovery from either alcohol or drugs gave me it really did. I think it helped me, gave me a much better understanding. Yeah.
All right. And when you were drinking, you thought, like every other alcoholic, that you'd one day control your drinking.
You know what? I didn't think I had a problem.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't, and I tried, the controlled drinking kind of thing. I had some kind of formula. I forget what it was. I would have a certain number of beers, and then I would take a break for like an hour and see in my mind, oh, well, I've had a couple beers, but I'm going to just not drink for an hour, and then I can have another beer. So I had this formula all worked out in my head.
It all sounds good at the time.
Yeah.
How much time do you have in recovery?
This coming up on this October, it'll be 10 years, which shows my confidence. It'll be 10 years.
There you go. And when did your character defects just stop? Like things that you
no.
Okay.
Oh God.
So you had to work. So when you quit drinking, you were still doing things that typical of an addict. Yeah,
and some of it was still not being honest about things, the honesty thing. And actually, my wife, once again, is the one that called me on it. She said after, I think it was probably about a year after I'd been sober or not drinking, and I was still having problems in my job, and we were still having some problems. She and I were still having some problems. But I didn't think there was a problem, and it wasn't until she confronted me on it. She said, "I'm happy for you. You're not drinking. That you're sober, but nothing else has changed. In other words, you're still an asshole."
Yeah. Did you ever get an ego about not drinking and just start thinking you're this big, this really upstanding citizen, and get an ego about, like, maybe you're still acting like an asshole, you say, but I don't drink. Get kind of pompous.
Probably, I don't know that I thought about it that way. I mean, I once again, I didn't. I thought things were going okay, but it's what I know now, and I've learned is that, and a lot of people make this mistake when they're in recovery or doing the 12 steps, is they think just once again just the not drinking part, and they focus too much on the drinking thing when the 12 steps says you're supposed to practice these principles on all your affairs. Mm-hmm. In other words, and I tell folks this all the time, it ain't about just not drinking. If you think that's what it is, then I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but you're probably not going to make it. Mm-hmm. Something's going to happen.
You'll find another vice.
Yeah, or you'll just be an asshole, and you'll be a sober asshole. So what good is that?
All right. And Alzheimer's cost you your career.
Yes.
And how long did you stop drinking before you developed Alzheimer's?
Well, I had to do the math. Let's see. My sobriety date is October 7th, 2009. I started to have symptoms of Alzheimer's. Looking back, my wife and I can kind of say this. Probably about, I think probably, and I don't know why I kind of remembered. Oh, I know, because we love to travel once again, and we went on a trip to Spain, and that was in 2015, and that's when she started noticing problems like when we once again love to travel, and when we would travel, I'd always do the plotting the plot, and get the maps and everything, and I was always real good about that. I was having trouble with that, even just trying to figure out where we were and where we were going to go, and the time thing became a problem. Like when we were in Spain, in Barcelona, I think we were. We had, she was going to do some shopping, and so I was just going to, wander around the city and see the city, and we had agreed to meet at a certain time. Well, I didn't show up at the meeting place or at the time because I had in my mind that it was someplace else and some other time. So that's when that's one of the big impairments really that I saw was the time thing and kind of location, kind of where I was.
How has AA helped you through all this?
It's the being in meetings and participating in the meetings and the interaction that's very stimulating to the brain. Mm-hmm. For one thing, that's a big thing. Helping other people is, I think, helps a lot. But the biggest thing, and that you learn in the program once again right away, is it's the connection with your higher power, which I choose to call God. That has helped more than anything, actually. Mm-hmm. Honestly, more than medication, more than anything else, mm-hmm. is that, and I mean, I'll say it this way: is that with as many problems as I have with my thinking, the impairments that I have with being able to process information just across the board, everything. Like I said, kind of computer issues and memory itself, of course. That short-term memory is the problem more than long-term. But with all of those impairments in all the different areas in my thinking and my brain ability to work, my spirituality has grown. Mm-hmm. It's stronger than ever. It's like and I've heard that from other people that have had some kind of like brain damage, say, or from a brain tumor or something like that, or an injury. Clients I had in the past, they had mentioned the same thing, that it's almost it's like it works on a different circuit. This connection with your higher power, it doesn't go away just because you have some kind of impairment.
So losing your cognitive abilities, being that you're very useful to people early in recovery, how important is that to your self-worth, just being able to be helpful to people that come into the rooms of AA?
Well, I love, helping people out. So I just am clear to people. That's why I'm not comfortable sponsoring people anymore. Mm-hmm. Or I'll be a temporary sponsor with somebody, because I tell folks I'm going to have a difficult time remembering stuff you tell me. I might forget appointments or whatever. I love going to meetings and participating in meetings, but I do not feel comfortable at all. I've gotten to the point I just don't feel comfortable sponsoring people.
Well, Kevin, it's a lot like a lot of people. I struggle when I came into the rooms to deal with life on life's terms. Mm-hmm. And you're an inspiration and a great help to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Eric on The Last Taboo. And thank you. And tune in for the next episode.
Thanks, Eric.